If you've ever driven through a town that feels a little too quiet, like the streets are holding their breath, keep listening. Because this story isn't about monsters jumping out of the dark. It's about a place that's been watching for a long time, learning people one by one, and waiting for someone to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. In the next few minutes, you're going to follow a deputy and his father into a property everyone avoids, where the air tastes like pennies. The radio stops behaving like a radio, and something out there doesn't just want to kill you, it wants to know you. So don't scroll, don't look away, and whatever you do, remember your name. The town was called Briar Hollow, though nobody could remember when the briars stopped growing. On the hill above Main Street, the old water tower still wore its faded letters like a shameful tattoo. Below it, the storefronts sat with their blinds shut and their for lease signs bleached almost white. The diner opened when it felt like it. The church bell had cracked years ago and rang with a dull, tired clank that made the dogs howl for reasons no one asked about. People said the Hollow had been dying for decades. They were wrong, it had been preparing. Deputy Eli Mercer learned that on a night when the sky looked too low and the air tasted like pennies. He sat at the small desk in the sheriff's office, filling out the kind of paperwork that made time feel like sludge. Across the room, Sheriff Hank Mercer, his father, leaned back in his chair with his boots on the radiator, reading an old hunting magazine he'd already read twice. The radio hissed softly. It always hissed softly, like it was clearing its throat before speaking. Then it spoke. Unit 1, Unit 2, disturbance reported at Morrow Place. Shots and screaming, callers unclear. Repeat, shots and screaming at Morrow Place. The sheriff's boots hit the floor. The Morrow Place sat out past the tree line, near the river where the land dipped into fog and the road lost its confidence. It had been a slaughterhouse once, back when Briar Hollow pretended it had an economy. The rendering plant next to it had burned down in the 70s, and the locals said the smoke had smelled like burnt hair for weeks. The Morrows rebuilt what they cared to rebuild. They left the rest to rot with purpose. Eli had never been inside. No one had, unless you counted the kids who dared each other to cross the fence and touch the barn door. One of those kids had gone missing his senior year. Officially, he ran off. Unofficially, people stopped letting their children wander near the river. The sheriff didn't look at Eli when he grabbed his hat. "Get your jacket, keep your hand off your gun unless I say." "Dad, it's shots and screaming." "It's always something out there," the sheriff said, and his voice had a tightness Eli didn't like. "Just get your jacket." They rolled out in the cruiser, tires whispering over wet asphalt. The town lights fell away quickly. Briar Hollow didn't spread so much as it thinned, like a puddle soaking into dirt. Houses became trailers. Trailers became empty lots. Empty lots became woods. The road to the Morrow Place ran between low fields that used to hold cattle. Now they held nothing but scrub grass and rusted troughs. The moon kept slipping behind clouds as if it didn't want to watch. Eli noticed the first bat when it struck the windshield with a dull tick. Then another. Then 3 in a row like hail made of warm leather. The sheriff slowed. That's not right. Bats didn't fly in a tight, frantic knot like this. Not this early in the night, not in January. They didn't throw themselves at headlights like they were trying to get inside. Eli leaned forward, peering through the glass. In the beams, the air looked thick. The bats weren't just flitting. They were streaming, a black ribbon that twisted toward the Morrowland. One of them hit the driver's side window and stuck for a second. Claws splayed. Eli saw its eyes in the passing glare. Not the glossy, bead-like eyes of a normal bat. These were pale, milk-lidded, as if they'd been dipped in something. The bat slid off. The sheriff gripped the wheel harder. "Keep your window up," he said, as if Eli ever rolled it down in winter. The gate to the Morrow property was chained. The sheriff didn't bother with the chain. He put the cruiser's bumper to it and shoved. Metal screamed. The gate gave way with a reluctant clatter. They followed the gravel drive, crunching past dead trees that leaned inward like gossipers. The house rose ahead, big and dark, with a sagging porch and windows that reflected nothing. Behind it, the barn crouched with its roofline broken, and beyond that, the foundation of the old rendering plant sat like a jaw with missing teeth. The bats thickened as they approached. The cruiser's headlights cut through them in short, flashing glimpses. Wings, teeth, wet glints. Then they were gone, replaced by more. Eli's throat tightened. "Where are they coming from?" The sheriff didn't answer. He stared past the house at the barn, where the darkness looked deeper, as if it had weight. They stopped near the porch. The engine idled. The radio hissed again, then cut out completely, leaving a silence that rang in Eli's ears. The sheriff reached for the shotgun mounted between the seats. He checked it with a practiced motion, but his knuckles were pale. "Stay behind me," he said. Eli stepped out, and the cold hit him like a slap. The air smelled wrong. Not like manure or old blood. He expected that, at least in memory, but like damp stone and something sour underneath, like fruit left too long in a basement. The bats circled above the barn in a tight coil. Every so often, one broke away and flew low, skimming the ground as if following a scent trail only it could taste. They walked up the porch steps. The boards creaked. The front door was half open, hanging on a broken hinge. Inside, darkness pooled, thick and still. "Sheriff Mercer," Hank called, voice steady by sheer force. "Anybody in there?" No answer. Eli's flashlight beam cut into the hallway. The walls were lined with old photographs, cattle, men in aprons, a family posed in front of the slaughterhouse with smiles too stiff. The Morrows. Their eyes followed the light as it passed, not because eyes can move, but because it felt that way. A sound came from deeper in the house, a wet rustle like someone dragging cloth across a floor. The sheriff lifted the shotgun. "Eli, light!" Eli angled his flashlight farther down the hall. The beam caught a patch of dark on the floor, glossy as spilled oil. Then another, then a trail leading toward the back. They moved slowly, the way you do when every instinct tells you to run, but pride keeps you walking. The kitchen was in disarray. A chair lay overturned. A drawer had been yanked out and spilled its contents like guts. Spoons, a broken corkscrew, a handful of old receipts. A pot sat on the stove, lit askew, steaming faintly though the burners were off. The sheriff's brow furrowed. "You smell that?" Eli did. It was stronger here, metallic and sweet and faintly burnt. A faint tapping came from the ceiling. Eli raised his light. The ceiling was stained in patches like old water damage. The tapping moved along the boards above them, quick and irregular. It sounded like claws. Then something dropped. A bat landed on the kitchen table between them with a soft thud, wings spread. It didn't fly away. It crawled forward, head jerking side to side as if listening with its whole body. Eli froze. The bat's mouth opened in a soundless scream, showing teeth too long for its face. The sheriff stepped forward and swung the shotgun stock. The bat burst like a rotten berry. For one stunned second, Eli thought it had exploded. Then he realized the bat was full of something. Pale, writhing strands slapped the table and slid down the edge. They moved like worms. They moved like nerves. Eli's stomach heaved. The sheriff stared at the mess as if his eyes couldn't accept it. "Back out," he said quietly. "We're backing out." A bang sounded from somewhere upstairs. A door slamming or a body falling or something heavier. The bats in the ceiling erupted into motion. The tapping became a storm. The sheriff grabbed Eli's shoulder. "Now!" They turned toward the hall, and there, at the far end, a figure stood in the doorway to the back room. It was a man at first glance. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a butcher's apron. Eli's flashlight beam hit the apron and it shone wetly. The man's face was turned slightly aside, hidden by shadow. "Sir," the sheriff called, trying to inject authority into a place that didn't recognize it. "Hands where I can see them." The figure's head tilted, not like confusion. Like interest, Eli's light drifted up, searching for eyes. The face was wrong. The skin was stretched too tight, as if it had been pulled over bone and forgot to settle. The mouth was split wider than a human mouth should be, but it wasn't smiling. It was simply open, showing a dark throat that seemed to go back farther than it should, as if the head was a tunnel. And where the eyes should have been, there were pale membranes, like the underside of a mushroom cap, trembling faintly. The figure took one step forward. The sheriff fired. The blast was deafening in the confined space. The recoil slammed into Hank's shoulder. The shot hit the figure in the chest and passed through it, shredding the apron and whatever was beneath. But there was no blood spray, no flinch. The figure staggered only because it chose to, then straightened again like a puppet pulled upright. Eli heard himself whisper, "Dad!" The sheriff fired a second time. The figure lurched. Its head snapped toward them, and for the first time, Eli understood that it had been listening to their voices, not hearing them. Tasting them, the bats in the ceiling poured out through cracks like smoke. They flooded the hallway. Their wings slapped Eli's face and neck. He swatted wildly, blinded, the air filled with squealing, the high-pitched shriek of panic and hunger. The sheriff shouted something Eli couldn't make out. Eli stumbled backward into the kitchen, tripping over the overturned chair. He hit the floor hard. His flashlight rolled, beam spinning across cabinets, across the table, across the mess of pale strands. A bat clamped onto his ear. He screamed and tore it off. It came away with a wet rip that made his vision flash white. He crawled toward the fallen flashlight, hands slipping on something slick. He grabbed it and swung the beam back toward the hallway. The figure was closer now, moving with a smoothness that didn't match its shape. The apron fluttered though there was no breeze. Behind it, the darkness in the back room looked not empty but layered like curtains. The sheriff stood between the figure and Eli, shotgun raised, but his stance faltered for the first time. Eli saw it in his father's shoulders. This wasn't fear of being shot. This was fear of being recognized. The figure lifted its hand. Its fingers were too many, or not enough. They moved like a handful of roots searching for soil. The bat surged again. The sheriff made a sound that was half curse, half prayer, and then he went down. He didn't fall like a man collapsing. He dropped like his strings had been cut. Eli's brain refused to process it. He crawled toward his father, reaching out through the storm of wings. His fingers found fabric and then flesh. The sheriff's face was turned toward Eli. His eyes were open, glassy, and unfocused. "Dad!" Eli gasped. "Dad, get up!" "Get up," the sheriff's mouth moved. Eli leaned close, desperate for any instruction, any anchor. The sheriff whispered, "Don't let it learn your name." Then his eyes rolled upward and he went still. Eli stared, unable to breathe. The bat screamed around him. The figure stood in the doorway, patient as rot. Eli grabbed his father's collar and tried to drag him. The sheriff was heavy, dead weight in a way Eli had never felt before. Eli pulled anyway, sobbing with effort and rage and disbelief. Something brushed his ankle. He looked down. One of those pale strands from the burst bat had slithered across the floor toward him. It moved with purpose, not like a worm, but like a hand. It touched Eli's boot, then recoiled as if tasting him through leather. Eli yanked his boot away. The strand followed. Another strand slid from under the table, then another. They were not coming from the bat anymore. They were coming from the house. Eli abandoned the sheriff. The guilt hit him like a punch, but survival hit harder. He scrambled toward the front of the house, toward the door, toward cold air and distance and anything that wasn't this. The hallway was a tunnel of wings. His flashlight beam chopped at the darkness. He pushed through like a swimmer in a black river. He burst onto the porch and fell down the steps, landing hard in wet grass. The cold air should have been relief. It wasn't. The night had changed. The sky was darker than it had been, as if the clouds had thickened into something solid. The stars were gone. The woods around the house seemed closer, leaning in. The bats were everywhere, but their movement had lost its frantic chaos. Now they flew in patterns, looping and spiraling as if tracing invisible letters in the air. Eli staggered toward the cruiser. He heard a sound behind him that made his bones go tight, a deep, slow rustle like massive wings unfurling. It wasn't the flutter of bats. It was the sound of something heavy adjusting itself in the world. Eli turned. Above the barn, the darkness was rising. At first, he thought it was smoke. Then he thought it was a cloud dropping low. Then his flashlight beam caught it, and his mind did what minds do when they meet something they can't categorize. It tried to make it smaller. It tried to call it a bird. It tried to call it a storm. It failed. The thing above the barn had a shape that suggested wings, but the wings were not made for flight. They were made for covering. For sealing, for closing. Under the wings, the body was a layered mass, like a nest built from muscle and bark and old skin. It pulsed slowly. It hung in the air without effort, as if gravity didn't apply to it, as if gravity belonged to it. Eli stared at the radio, horrified. The name sounded different, spoken through that hiss, stretched as if it had been chewed. Behind him, the huge thing above the barn shifted. A slow roll, like a whale turning in deep water. The air pressure changed. Eli's ears popped. He tasted copper again, stronger now. The bats dipped low and then rose as if riding a tide. Eli stumbled into the driver's side door, fumbled the handle, got it open. He threw himself inside and slammed it shut. The windows were already up. The locks clicked automatically, a tiny, useless act of defiance. He jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned once, twice, then died, as if the battery had been drained by the sheer offense of trying to leave. Outside the windshield, the bats gathered on the hood, covering it in a living blanket. Their pale eyes stared in unblinking focus. Eli tried again. The engine coughed and went silent. The radio hissed. The voice returned, closer to normal now, as if it was practicing. "Eli," it said softly. Eli covered his ears. He squeezed his eyes shut. He pressed his forehead against the steering wheel like a man praying to a god he didn't believe in. He felt, rather than heard, a slow thump on the roof of the cruiser. Then another, not bats. Something heavier, something placing itself carefully. The whole car sank a fraction, suspension groaning. Eli looked up. Through the windshield, he could see the barn clearly now, framed by the bats and the low, crushed sky. The huge thing was no longer hovering above it. It was moving, not toward the cruiser. Not in a straight line, it didn't need lines. It moved by deciding to be closer. The distance between it and Eli wasn't measured in feet anymore. It was measured in attention. Eli's mouth opened and a sound came out, half sob, half laugh. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The radio clicked, a final burst of static. Then the voice, gentle as a lullaby, spoke with perfect clarity. "Briar Hollow," it said, like it was savoring the words. Like it had always known them. The bats lifted off the hood in unison. The air cleared for one awful moment, and Eli saw his reflection in the windshield. His face looked too white, his eyes too wide. A man seeing himself from very far away. The huge thing's eyes blinked, slowly, thoughtfully, and then Eli felt something reach through the glass without breaking it. A pressure against his chest, like a hand made of cold water pushing inward, not trying to crush him, trying to learn him. His thoughts scattered. Memories flashed, his mother's laugh, the smell of his father's jacket, the first time he'd fired a gun, the taste of cheap coffee at the diner. The pressure paused on each memory like a finger tracing a page. Eli tried to hold on to one thing. One simple fact, I am not my name. But the thing didn't want his name anymore. It had that. It wanted the shape behind it. Outside, the woods leaned in. The town lights miles away flickered once like a distant eyelid closing. Eli's last clear thought wasn't a prayer. It was a bitter, helpless realization, as plain as the cold. Briar Hollow hadn't been dying. It had been feeding. In the morning, the road out past the fields looked normal to anyone passing by. The chain on the gate was intact. The gravel drive showed no tire tracks. The Morrow house sat quiet behind its dead trees, porch sagging, windows dark. The sheriff's office phone rang all day. Nobody answered. When state troopers finally came 2 days later, they found the office empty, the paperwork half finished, a cup of coffee cold and untouched. They searched the town and found people who swore they'd seen Sheriff Mercer that week, though they couldn't remember what day. They found neighbors who insisted Deputy Eli had moved to the city months ago, though they couldn't name the city. On the county map, Briar Hollow remained a small dot among many. But when you tried to drive there, the roads did odd things. They curved when they shouldn't. They dead-ended at fields you didn't remember. GPS spun in slow circles, polite and confused. At night, if you stood on the right stretch of highway with your engine off and your lights dead, you could sometimes hear wings in the distance. Not the flutter of bats. Something deeper, something patient. And if you listened too long, you might hear a voice in the static of your radio speaking gently, practicing names as if tasting them, waiting for the next town that thinks it's merely dying.